We'll take a short break, and when we come back, a U.S. State Department report claims China wants to revise the world order, placing itself at the center. What is driving the claims, and what is the impact on the relationship that is already under stress? Welcome back. The U.S. State Department this month issued a report called The Elements of the China Challenge, which warns that China not only aims at preeminence within the established world order, but wants to fundamentally revise the world order, placing China at the center. The 70-page report, written by the State Department's policy planning staff, lays out 10 tasks for the U.S. to accomplish in the face of this quote-unquote China challenge, including fashioning sturdy policies that stand above bureaucratic squabbles and interagency turf battles and transcend short-term election cycles. What are the key concerns in this report? How legitimate are they? And to what extent will the report shape U.S.-China relations going forward? Joining me for the discussion in Beijing are Lyu Xiang, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and from Washington, D.C. via Skype, Dr. Ivan Eland, Senior Fellow from the think tank, the Independent Institute. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Dr. Lyu, let me start with you. I mean, there are, roughly 2 months until a change of government, and we understand that some of the staff in the State Department, of course, they're, career diplomats, they will stay, but many others, many political appointees will have to leave. What do you make of the fact that this report was issued now?
Yeah, as I understand, now it's garbage time for President Trump and some of his top officials. So at this garbage time, they are trying to set up some traps for the next administration, because now is the lowest point for the U.S.-China relation, and for the next administration, there's much room to adjust the policies on the U.S. side. So now the current administration, especially some so-called strategic hawks in the White House and in the Department of State, they are trying to set up more traps so that the next administration will face more difficulties in trying to improve the relations to solve the real problems.
Well, that is an interesting perspective there. Dr. Eland, what do you think?
Yes, well, I think that's largely correct, that the Trump administration is trying to make as much of a fait accompli, a done deal when the policy comes in. Of course, that's ridiculous. When we have changes of administration in the United States, they'll just rip up the document, and it's just a document. There are other ways that the Trump administration can, influence the next administration, but I think basically Biden will decide what his own policy is. The problem for China is Trump has sort of polluted the atmosphere here with China, and also the other problem is that the United States, both parties have become more protectionist because of the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. And of course, we now have a deep recession because of the COVID. So when people have recessions, they don't understand that free trade is a way to get out of the recession and have everybody prosper. China, the United States, Germany, Japan, the rest of the world. So this protectionism is ill-founded, but that tends to happen in the United States and I think other places as well when there's a recession. So China has to deal with that because it's just a fact that Biden is probably more secretly free trade certainly than Trump is, but he's constrained by his own party.
I mean, in what ways is he constrained by his own party if and when he seeks, the ways of free trade?
Well, as I say, the winds have gone more to protectionism. In the 2016 campaign, you saw even Hillary, who was a free trader, globalization. Her husband was a big proponent of that in his administration, but she had to go more protectionist. And the Republican Party used to be the free trade party, the most free trade party, but they've been taken over by the Trumpsters. and they're definitely protectionists. So unfortunately, I think, because I'm a free trader, that I think everybody prospers when there's competition and there's free trade, and I don't see anything wrong with globalization. Now, you may have to make adjustments in certain countries if you're inequality of wealth and that sort of thing, but those can be managed at the margins.
Dr. Lyu, the report of the State Department's Policy Planning Department opens with this line. The Chinese Communist Party aims to fundamentally revise world order, placing the People's Republic of China at the center and serving Beijing's authoritarian goals and hegemonic ambitions. I mean, what do you make of that? Authoritarian goals and hegemonic ambitions?
Yeah, this kind of comments actually doesn't represent any interest of the United States. They just show us that some American strategic hawks are panicking about China's growth. I think there are 2 points in the recent history. First, it is that in 2010, China's economy became the second largest in the world, and then in 2014, in terms of the purchase power parity, China's economy became the largest in the world. Against this backdrop, this kind of hawks just see China as a threat. So now they are trying to identify any elements for attacking China's growth, and they are going to distract the U.S. policymakers to just focus on the so-called great power competition instead of focusing on the U.S. domestic issues.
You know, Dr. Lyu, I want to stay with this report. Some people compare it to the Mr. X article published in 1947 by the famous George Kennan, the chief U.S. State Department policy planning staff. The report, of course, as you know better than I do, laid the foundation for America's Cold War strategies against the Soviet Union. I mean, are the 2 reports really comparable?
The comparison is very interesting. Actually, this George Kennan was the director for the policy of the DOS. But actually, what Mr. Kennan said was totally different from what the current officials are speaking about. Mr. Kennan was saying about a competition between two rival blocks. Yeah, that's one bloc was led by the U.S., the other bloc was led by the Soviet Union, and now we don't see this kind of blocks in the world. If there is any kind of rivalry between in this world, it's only between the United States and China. We don't see the 2 blocks in this world. So we know some people in the U.S. are advocating kind of Cold War or new Cold War, but they don't know the situation has been totally changed. So that's the interesting point.
I mean, Dr. Eland, another line from this report goes like this. While the extent in China of the economic contraction caused by COVID-19 is uncertain, declining manufacturing is there, so is diminished consumption and limited stimulus tools that would depress GDP and increase unemployment in China. That is a pretty bleak picture painted of China's economy, which may not necessarily be true, is it?
Well, I think it's wishful thinking on the part of a State Department who clearly, at this point, before the Biden administration takes power, is very anti-China, and I think Biden will be more of an even-handed person on the issue of China. So I think we just have to wait. But I think China does have some long-term issues. Too much for its economy. Too much still state intervention in the economy. I come from a free market capitalist viewpoint there. But I think China's economy is not nearly that bad, and I think it'll still have good growth.
Mm-hmm. Right, Dr. Lyu, let's talk about the larger picture here. Earlier this month, Dr. Henry Kissinger said the incoming Biden administration, in his own words, should move quickly to restore lines of communication with China. I mean, how do you foresee lines of communication being restored between Beijing and Washington?
Yes, I appreciate very much what Dr. Kissinger just said. Actually, currently the most difficult part between our two countries is that the two peoples cannot exchange each other, partly because of the COVID-19 and partly because of the hostile actions on the U.S. side. So with the new administration is coming in, we expect that in the next year, first of all, the two peoples can restore somehow the communications, transportations between the two countries, and secondly, on the top level, our the top leaders of our two sides could exchange views in depth about the essence of the relationship of these two most important, or even you can say the two indispensable nations.
Right, Dr. Eland in Washington, D.C., I mean, what do you think? Do you foresee a détente of some sort between Beijing and Washington in January?
I think there'll be
Dr. Eland,
easing of relations.
Okay.
Yes, I think there'll be an easing of relations. And I also think it's not inevitable that China and the U.S. will go to war. There's a guy named Graham Allison, who's a famous political scientist, who did a study. Since 1500, 16 competitions have occurred between rising and status quo powers. And unfortunately, in 12 of those, they went to war. But in the 4 that didn't go to war, some of them have been very recent. And I think, number one, both countries have nuclear weapons. Number 2, they have a commercial relationship. The U.S. and the Soviet Union avoided war, but they didn't have any commercial relationship at all. And the third one is what the U.S. and the British had, which was a successful transition of powers, was a big ocean in between them, and that was the Atlantic. Well, the Pacific's even bigger, and so I don't think intrinsic security...
Right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here, Dr. Eland. Thank you so much for your insights, and Dr. Lyu, thank you as well. And that will do it for this edition of The Point. Thank you for watching. I'm Wang Wen in Beijing.